Good morning, Denman Calico. Welcome to today's home learning. I hope you're all well. A bit of a change to the home learning this week. We've just got 2 home learning videos and the exercises that go with that. Some of you are back in school, so there'll be work from school as well. In the home learning videos, we'll be continuing to press ahead with the work we've been doing recently, which is on decimals at the moment. So before we get into the nitty-gritty today, just want to do a quick review of some of our knowledge of decimals. Okay, so I've written here, what do each of these blocks stand for? Please give your answers as decimals, fractions, and in written form. So grab a pencil and paper, or a pen, and I would like you to just write, as I say, the values of these blocks in decimals, fractions, and in written form. Pause the video and off you go. Okay, this is going to be really helpful for today's lesson to just refresh ourselves on what these blocks represent. So the first one, our small block, we know that that is one part of a whole, and that 1,000 of these would make that one whole. So we know that this is 0.001. Okay, and that's in which column? It's not in our tenths column, it's not in our hundredths column, and it's in our thousandths column. It's 1 over 1,000. In written form, it's 1,000th. Okay? If I take 10 of these, I can make one long block of these. So what does this block represent? Well, 0.01. It's not a tenth. It's in our hundredths column. So it's 1 over 100. You can write that as 1/100th. Remember that TH on the end. It's not 100, it's 100th. If we're talking about decimals. If I take 10 of these long blocks, I can make one of these large blocks. Okay. As a decimal, we write that as 0.1. It's in our tenth column. As a fraction, 1 over 10, 1/10. So remember, we've got 10 small blocks in our long line. Okay, so if I have 10 thousandths, I can make 1/100th. If I have 10 hundredths, I can make 1/10th. Okay, so we've refreshed that knowledge, and now we'll move on to looking at what we're going to do today, comparing decimals. So lesson 4 today is on comparing decimals. Our non-negotiables. Pupils can read decimal numbers and share them using place value blocks. Well, we've just been looking at place value blocks. Pupils can compare decimal numbers using place value blocks. So we're looking at using those blocks. Obviously, we don't have any physically in our hands, but we're looking at using those blocks that we've been looking at to compare and read decimal numbers. Okay, so our in focus task, we've got 2 values here, 0.4 and 0.12. And we've got blue shirt and we've got pink dress. Blue shirt is saying 12 is greater than 4. So 0.12 is greater than 0.4. Pink dress is saying, I disagree. Who is correct? Pause your video and think about who you think is correct. Think about why you think that is correct. And think about how you can show that that is correct. Okay, we're going to move on and we're going to look at picking this apart and finding out which of these two, blue shirt and pink dress, is correct. So we're going to start by writing these numbers as fractions. And we're also going to start by looking at how we can, well, partition them, really. So write 0.4 as a fraction. Well, we've got our decimal number and we've got our blocks, which are going to help us to do that. So pink dress here has written that 0.4 is 4/10. I'm going to write this again just to keep it in my mind, because I find that helpful. 0.4 equals 4/10. I've written it. I can also write that as my fraction, 4/10. Okay. But she then goes on to say 0.4 is also 40 hundredths. 0.4 is also 40 hundredths. What's she talking about there? Have a think about what she's talking about there, and we'll speak about it in a moment. Okay, so she said 0.4 is 4/10, and it's also 40 hundredths. Well, what pink dress has done here is she's taken our 4 large blocks, she's pulled them apart, broken them into different pieces, and she's been able to make 40 hundredths. So 0.4 as tenths is 4/10, but we can also use it as 40 hundredths. 4/100. Okay? So she's taken her blocks, she's broken them apart into pieces of 10, and they're in 4 groups of 10. So 0.4 is equal to 4/10, or it's also equal to 40 hundredths. Okay? So we know the value now of 0.4, both in tenths and in hundredths. Let's look at 0.12, because we need to find out which of these two is larger and which is smaller. So write 0.12 as a fraction. Well, you can see here that 0.12 is a bit different. There's different parts here. Here, they're all the same parts. Here, they're a bit different. So I'm just going to get my box up. We can write 0.12 equals, it's a bit big, 0.12 equals, yellow dress has got it on here, 1/10. I'm just going to write the fractions here for this one, and 2 hundredths. We've got 1/10 and 2 hundredths. How else can we write that? What's another way we could write that? Okay, so we could also write it as 0.12 equals 12 hundredths. A bit of a mix there. So 1/10 and 2 hundredths, or we could also just write this as 12 hundredths, because again, we can take our 10th block, we can break it up into 10 pieces, and then we've got 12 hundredths. Okay, now let's compare our 2 decimals that we turn into fractions. So 0.4 equals 4/10 or 40 hundredths. .12 equals 1/10 and 2/100ths, or it equals 12/100ths. It's all broken up. Okay, so looking at this, I can see that 40/100ths is greater than 12/100ths. So now I know that 40/100ths are greater than 12/100ths and 0.4 is greater than 0.12. Okay, so a good way of doing this is finding out what the fraction is, either in tenths or in hundredths, and then you'll be able to tell which decimal is greater. Okay, we're going to move on and we're going to look at some of this guided practice. The first question here, use our whole blocks, our tenth blocks, our hundredth blocks, and our thousandth blocks to help you compare the numbers in each pair. Well, I don't think many of us will have those blocks with us, but what we can do is think about some of the strategies just used there and changing those values to decimals, sorry, to fractions, either as tenths or as hundredths, okay? We've got A, B, C, D, and E. I want to look here at C, because I think C is the most interesting one, okay? And we're just going to use my knowledge now of decimals and fractions to compare these. So 0.45, well, that's 4/10 and 5/100ths. 0.54, well, that's 5/10 and 4/100ths. Let's change that to just a fraction using hundredths. Well, 0.45, I know that's 45 parts of 100, so that's 45 over 100, 45/100ths. Again, the same here, 0.54, I know that's 54 parts of 100. So I can take that back, and it becomes 54/100ths. Okay. So I would like you to have a go at this guided practice. Okay. The second part is comparing numbers using the greater than and smaller than symbols. So I'd like you to have a go at those on a scrap piece of paper, and then I'll show you the answers for those. Okay. All right, so you should have found here which number is smaller, and you should have compared the numbers in number 2. So here are your answers. Which number is smaller? Well, I think the first one is self-explanatory. We've got a 1 and a 2 in the units column, in the ones column, sorry. So I think it's clear that 1.9 is the smaller one there. 0.6 or 0.4, the smaller value is 0.4. 0.45 or 0.54, we already did that one. 0.45 is the smaller value. 0.2 or 0.19. 0.19 is the smaller value. 0.19 or 0.1, well, 0.1 is the small value there. Okay. It isn't important, really. We don't have to think about the amount of decimal places and how that affects the size of the number, because there can be a number to 1 decimal place, which is larger than a number with 2 decimal places, or it can be vice versa. To compare the numbers, use the symbols for greater than or smaller than. 2 is greater than 0.97. 0.79 is smaller than 0.8. 0.23 is greater than 0.2. Okay, so for today's work, I'd like you to review that, review some of the knowledge we've learned, some of the learning we've just done today. Then I would like you to complete worksheet 4, pages 7 and 8. That would be your task today. I'm also going to put a link on this, at the bottom of this worksheet for the ED quizzes that I want you to complete today. Okay. Thank you very much, Deno and Calico. And I will be seeing some of you in school.